All right, everyone. Mercury and I are here with James today. Welcome to Sorting Myself Out. And James, it's great to have you back again.
Yeah, it's good to be here again. Thanks for taking the time to,
I
I guess.
I can't hear very well, so let me fix that real quick. But Mercury, if you want to help introduce this while I'm fixing that, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to talk about, but for anyone just joining us, James has been on the channel a couple times now, so there's a few podcasts you can go back and look at. And aside from that, he's also been very active on Discord and at the watch parties. So, yeah, I don't know this. I was just chatting with James at length last night, and which was fantastic. There was a section of last night's party that I really wish we had recorded. When we got onto the double slit experiment and all of that last night, it was fantastic. Oh, also, just for anyone watching this, we'll be having another party tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'll put up an announcement later. But yeah, for anyone who is interested in catching the next party, it will be tonight. So all I know about today is that James wanted to talk again, and I'm always up to talk to him about anything. So what about you, James? Do you want to set up what you had in mind to discuss?
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of related to something that we talked about on one of the watch parties with Andrew a few maybe last week or something. But one thing I've noticed that I've kind of found interesting is that so I like to drink coffee sometime in the early afternoon. And I find that when I drink coffee, it helps my mood quite a bit. And I feel a lot more productive and feel like I can really focus on my work, like for school or something. Um, and I've also noticed that sometimes if I don't drink coffee, um, then maybe it's the case that it's not as easy to get work done, or maybe I'm just in a worse mood, or feeling a lot lazier. And it makes me wonder about the question, when is it okay to use a substance in order to do something like improve mood or productivity or something like that? Because on the one hand, I could see it as um, it could be a situation where maybe you actually need to get some work done, and so maybe it's a good thing to drink coffee, or whatever the situation is. But on the other hand, maybe it's also something that I am at least partially using to keep myself from properly learning how to deal with or face the worst moods or something like that that I might get if I don't drink coffee. So at least the way I'm kind of approaching it now is, because I don't really want to develop a severe dependence on coffee. I limit myself to a cup a day, and then every few days or so, I'll go a day without drinking coffee at all. So yeah, I don't
Okay,
know.
so
I think this is sort of related to something Andrew was talking
Sounds like you're really out of control.
and so I think that can actually broaden. Um, so there's both using drugs to regulate your mood and using drugs for productivity. So whether it's you having a cup of coffee or a couple roofers saying we've got to get this job done, everyone do a line of coke and we're going to bang this roof off, or whether it's artists saying that they can't write without smoking weed, or that their inspiration are hallucinogenics. So yeah, there are a lot of fields where people use drugs for productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And but then also I think it comes down to that whole idea of you're two beings. There's you as a worker and you as a being. So I think also it's a valid conversation just to say, when is it okay to use drugs just to feel
Right.
better? Like whether that's that you have some sort of depression or a problem to deal with, or even just yeah, when is it okay to use drugs just to improve your experience? Is it more justifiable if you're being productive? Like, I get the feeling off you that it's more okay for you to have a big cup of coffee to get work done than to have a big cup of coffee on a Sunday afternoon where you're off for the day and it's just for the fun of feeling your brain speed up. And maybe me and Ryan will be a good pair for this, because Ryan's recovered, or I don't know how you talk about it, Ryan. Some people like to always call it you're in recovery or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I'm the flip side, where there's certain drugs I won't do at all. And then there's other drugs where I know with coffee and weed, too much isn't good for me, not enough isn't good for me. And then there's others, like for me, cigarettes are one where that's just, I can smoke morning to night if that's what I feel like doing, and I don't put any pressure on myself at all. Also, even cigarettes, I believe there are studies now showing why so many writers and whatnot, it does stimulate your ability to think. And I find cigarettes help me regulate myself. Also, people who are severely bipolar or schizophrenic often will be chain smokers. And there's something about, they think part of it is that it does help us stay more focused on our breath, but that it helps us regulate ourselves to have that constant flow. But there are other writers and such that find the same thing, or, you know, scientists, that if they smoke or even chain smoke while working, that they'll find that stimulates their brain. And so it is an actual thing. Like, drugs really do affect us. They alter the way our bodies work. And where we draw the line between drug or not, I also find sometimes interesting. Like, too much oxygen gets you high. Not enough oxygen fucks you up. Or even just the way your diet also affects you very much. Like, why do you differentiate perhaps eating healthy and the way that fills you with energy from consuming the coffee bean, just because it's technically got that one drug? So, yeah, because I'm going to lean very much towards, I'm a fucking pothead that drinks coffee every day, and I'm addicted to it. Like, I'm aware I'm addicted to coffee, and I would agree with you, it's better not to be, because if I was ever in a situation where I couldn't have coffee for a day, I've got the fucking headaches and shit to deal with. That's the downside. But for me, the upsides outweigh it. So I'm going to stop there and let you jump in, Ryan, and you give a perspective significantly different from mine.
Yeah, I actually quit drinking caffeine in February, I think. Yeah, and it was really difficult because I had a pretty heavy dependence on coffee. And I weaned myself off by doing like half calf and decaf. And then I did no caffeine for a little over a month. And then I went back to, now I'm drinking decaf in the mornings, which I think has a very small amount of caffeine in it. I think if you drink like 5 cups of decaf, it equates to 1 cup of coffee. But yeah, I just wanted to see what my mind would be like if I wasn't dependent, because I had been drinking coffee for over 8 years pretty regularly. Like, there'd been a couple times where I didn't drink coffee for a day or a few days, but not very often. And I was just noticing that I needed more and more. You know, I wasn't nearly as moderate as you. I was drinking at least 3 or 4 cups a day typically. And yeah, it was really hard, and also it was really beneficial, because after you get through that first week, at least in my experience, there becomes a sense of natural energy that you can focus, you can stay awake and alert without needing that external boost. So I just wanted to see what it would be like. But I think this is like a lot of things. There's no universal answer. There's no guidebook to how much coffee should you drink or if you should drink coffee. I think it's a really personal question that you have to observe your life. Like, how are you feeling? You know, what would improve your life? What would make you feel better? How would you be the best person that you could be? And then you start sizing that up against the substances you take and the lifestyle choices that you're making on a regular basis. And then you have to decide, you know, what stimulants or what drugs are okay with me, what lifestyle decisions are okay with me. So I'm going to put it back to you, James, because I don't think that there is a canned answer for this question. What in this circumstance do you think would be best for you?
And actually, before you go, James, I just want to tag something on that, like where Ryan pointed out that he quit coffee and observed himself. Since I've been bipolar, I've twice quit weed and coffee for over a year. So there's been a few times where I've quit at shorter amounts, but twice I've quit weed and coffee for over a year. I've never quit cigarettes since I've been bipolar. When I was younger, I tried a few times. And for me, I observed myself without coffee and without weed, and life was more difficult. I didn't function as well without coffee to help. And I find coffee helps me choose my mood. Like if I want to have a relaxed morning and take it slow. And I find, again, when you're addicted, it's like I'll need to have a couple sips of coffee just to get that edge off, but then I won't get any of the caffeine kick. And I'll spend some mornings quietly like that. Other mornings I can get myself going. So it's not that I've been hopelessly addicted to coffee and weed this whole time. I've gone on and off a few times, and just for me, I work better on. Ryan finds he works better off. So with that in mind, how do you find both when you drink coffee every day for a while or if you quit?
Yeah, so so like I said, if I usually have it in the early afternoon, and then after that I feel like it's pretty easy to zone in and do, like, get a decent amount of work done, or reading or whatever it is that I have in the day. But I've been kind of thinking about it for a while, and I think maybe it's kind of a weird perspective, because like when I used to play music with other people, I sort of felt like I should be able to do this, like play music and play it well, and be creative and everything without like drinking alcohol or anything. And so somehow I sort of have an analogous feeling where like I should be able to like focus and get really interested in whatever work I have to do during the day without this other external thing to like help push me in that direction. You know what I mean?
I have a question now, and this isn't because I'm disagreeing with you. It's to find out the flavor of what you're thinking. So for instance, you think, okay, should I drink coffee so that I've got this mental stimulation to act? But I assume you don't feel the same way with food. When you get up, you don't think, should I eat food so I have energy to work today? Or should I find a way to push through without the benefit of taking in substances from around me? So I'm just curious on that level, like why is that even a should I? What comes up for you when you think about that?
Yeah, so I think it's, well, one of the differences is that I see food as necessary, but coffee is not necessary. And then another thing is if I have a sugar craving, I view that in the same way as well. You know, like why do I? Because sometimes if I get a sugar craving, I can get sort of irritable, or like lose motivation to do things. And it's a similar sort of thing where like it feels weird, or like I should be able to control or be able to do things productively or whatever without, like eating some chocolate or something.
Actually, sugar is a great example, because that's more in the middle. It does very much act like a drug, yet it's also a part of food. Yeah, and like for all of us, our blood sugar level, like it affects our mood. And if you felt your blood sugar drop and your mood drop, there is a sort of guru way to look at that, where you're like, well, why should I allow the drop in sugar in my blood level to affect me? The same way that some fakir might be able to say, why should I let a sword injure me just because I'm pressing it through my chest? But on the other hand, for a lot of people would just say, like, why on earth are you going to try to work around all that biology? Just have a fucking chocolate bar or a glass of orange juice and feel better. And yeah, is there a should to that? So for instance, with someone else, maybe if instead of looking at yourself, if you were looking at someone else and they were a brilliant student and you observed that they did all their work while drinking coffee, or maybe even they're more like me, where it's a pot a day and that's how they do their work. would you look down on them more to someone else who was doing that without coffee? Would you be judgmental of others?
No, that's the weird thing about it. I don't feel judgmental or anything about other people who, and I think that's mostly because I'm very much aware of I think a lot about, you don't really know what other people have going on in their lives.
And so,
you know what I mean?
I can understand the not wanting to get dependent on coffee, where if you can't have it, you've got the headaches or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Aside from that one makes sense. Are there any other downsides? Because we're all different. For some of us, even a prescribed drug will cause side effects it doesn't for others. So hypothetically, and again, not that I'm saying the issue of dependence isn't valid. That's like excellent.
Right.
But if hypothetically that weren't an issue, because let's say hypothetically you had a lifetime supply of coffee, so that getting addicted isn't an issue for you. Like that idea, or anyway, would there be other side effects from it for you? Like, do you notice anything else the coffee causes? Does it cause any sort of hangover, burnout after, or does it bring out anything unpleasant in you?
I mean, I think the only other thing is, and it's not exactly unpleasant, but like my mind races a lot if I have a cup of coffee, or at least for like a short period afterwards. At least it seems like my mind's just like going and going and going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's the line of questioning I'd like to explore is where is the should coming from? Because it's easy to get caught up in universals, like, oh, should everybody be drinking coffee, or what's the right amount of coffee to drink, or somebody tell me what I should do. But I want to know where your internal discernment is coming from, and what is that experience like for you? Explain the phenomenology to me of the part of you that says you should be able to work without coffee.
Yeah, so I think for me it's the part of me that sort of sees things that I enjoy doing or like certain things that I really enjoy doing, like sometimes my math work or like playing music or whatever, as sacred in some sense. So there's almost like a sacredness or like maybe a purity or something to it that I sort of feel around it. And I'm not quite sure exactly how to talk about it in ways other than that.
It sounds like it's a protector of and a keeper of what's the most meaningful to you in your life, and an image of, and it maybe a potential image of who you could be or how you could, what the best version of you as far as excellence would look like it's almost like there's an achiever aspect to it. An achiever. So let's just call it, let's say it's a protective achiever or something like that. A sacred protective achiever, because I think that's honoring all the facets that you just explained. What aspects of you are not in agreement with that? Because the conflict is, I have an aspect of me that doesn't want to drink coffee and wants to be more disciplined and do the most that I can with the least amount of stimulus possible to come from within myself. And there's another aspect of me that wants to enjoy these things about life. So let's dive into the polarity.
Sure. Yeah, so I think there's definitely another part of me which, well, first of all, I mean, I just enjoy maybe a more relaxed part of me that would say, what's the problem? There's no problem with just enjoying a cup of coffee. Like, what's the big deal?
Right.
And that would probably be a similar part that, is like, would like to drink a beer with friends or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, got it. So here's the experiment I want to run here. So have the dialogue between those two parts, and I just want to see where it goes. So be the achiever and state your position, then respond from the pleasure seeker or whatever you want to call it, and just let them go back and forth for a little bit. I just want to see what happens.
Sure. Okay, so let's see. So, okay, I am the achiever, and if something important, or if I have the potential to create something important or useful or good or something valuable in some way, then it has to come entirely from me in some way. I look up to people like Einstein or other, say, physicists and mathematicians who are able to, who have come up with these great things just almost by almost pulling it entirely out of from within themselves.
I have a question there for you.
Okay.
And to bring in Cantor as well. So you know the way for him, like, I don't know Einstein as well, so I'm not sure exactly how he's pulling it out of himself. But, you know, there's some great scientists who look really deep within themselves and seem to pull up almost from a soul level. Or then you look at Cantor, where it was both his effort and energy to interact with the ideas, but from his perspective, he didn't do it alone. He was being given information by God.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, whether it's Jung experiencing the archetypes or whatever Einstein encountered when he turned within, it's like you're defining that as him doing it alone. But maybe that's just him plugging into something in the internal realm to assist him.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would.
And just to add to that, like, because you mentioned something about the more spiritual element of everything. When you look at it more spiritually, you might stop classifying coffee as a drug and instead look at it as a plant teacher. What's wrong? What's wrong with Cantor?
Merc, hold on a second. Before we go down, I really wanted to explore this dialogue, because right now what's happening is you're trying to convince the achiever of a different way of looking at things, whereas that's gonna induce other parts of James to come in. What I was trying to see if we could get to is, can we let the achiever and the pleasure seeker, or whatever he wants to call it, finish their dialogue, and then we come in to help James come to his own conclusion about what the right choice is for him, instead of assuming that there's some sort of external. That's what I would like to do, and it's okay if you guys want to go in a different direction. I just want.
Yeah, no, sorry. I guess
we kind of stopped in the middle of the exercise.
Yeah, I was just trying to find out more from the achiever on that. But you're right. I should wait and let the other parts of him bring it up.
Well, also, I'm just curious, what part of you, Merc, or what aspect of you would like to convince the achiever that there's another way to look at this? Just so we can bookmark that.
I don't know what to call it. It's the curiosity that I want to hear what the achiever thinks when I present the other. So I'm not trying to convince. I'm trying to say, if I offer this perspective, how does that compare to yours? Because I want to hear more deeply how the achiever is feeling what James is saying. So I was wanting to throw that up as, what does this make you feel? To get deeper into what he was saying.
Okay, so you were kind of prodding a little bit.
Yeah. I was trying to dig deeper into what he was saying now before he moved on.
Okay, so let's stick with that. I misunderstood. I interpreted it as you were trying to show the achiever that wasn't the only way to look at it. So I misunderstood what you were doing.
So sort of what I was saying was, if the achiever were to realize that I see Einstein and Cantor not doing it alone, how does the achiever respond? And if anything, actually, I'm kind of inviting the achiever to tease me back away from my position into his with that question.
Yeah. So as the achiever, I see, say, Cantor's ability to connect with that, or like the insanity that he had in his life. I see that as an internal gift that he has. So it doesn't strike me as an issue. I mean, I think it's, you know, you can argue back and forth about whether it was him or not, but to me, it still came from internal to him, to Cantor. You know, like he had a gift of connecting with a certain aspect of himself in his very deep way that maybe overwhelmed him in a way that he wasn't able to handle. But there was still, that was, to me, that was still like an internal thing for him. And like there's other people like the famous Indian mathematician Ramanujan, who you know, he believed that gods were telling him these insanely difficult to understand mathematical formulas that turned out to be true, though people weren't able to prove it for a long time. And so to me, that falls in line with the sort of sacredness. It's like this person has a gift to connect to this thing they're interested in a very sacred and deep way.
Awesome. And then now shift from, actually first let's make sure that we understand. So the achiever is striving for excellence, looks to examples of people who have achieved excellence, and this is a sub-personality inside of you, a really authentic part of who you are that believes that that true achievement comes from within and not from external crutches for you, for yourself.
And,
okay.
And I did get the clarification there. It's that to your achiever, assistance from the astral realm or angels counts as internal nature. That still feels like doing it yourself. However, if you were to use a plant medicine, then that feels to the achiever like a crutch. Even though from a different perspective, you might say that the angels are just as much a help as the plant medicine. I get now how your achiever differentiates that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And then what would you like to title the other part of you, just for the sake of this conversation?
Yeah. Let's say something like the laid back guy, or guy says, well, I mean, there's no problem with enjoying, you know, the feeling you get from drinking a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever once in a while. And, you know, you're not letting it control your life and you're not becoming too dependent on it. So there's no problem there. And sometimes it helps you be productive when it would be much more difficult for you to be productive otherwise. And there are also plenty of people who achieve great things using, you know, like other substances. You know, some artists, musicians, some mathematicians as well. And maybe the important thing is not necessarily whether you use a substance or not. It's what you create out of a situation when you use the substance.
And there might be something like this for a statement as the laid back guy. It might sound something like, I just enjoy what I enjoy. I like what I like, and I like having the pleasure to engage with these things, and please don't take that, you know, don't take that away from me. Something like that in your own words would be a good statement.
So
James.
You know, coffee sometimes helps me enjoy doing math more, and like that's not a bad thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I have a question for your achiever, just out of like curiosity. So like when your achiever looks at me, I kind of assume that the framework that makes most sense with me is that people would see with me, perhaps I require some chemical assistance others might not, being bipolar. And imagine, because I know you appreciate what I do here on the channel, I would imagine that your achiever would be fine with my drug uses and would see that that's allowing me to do all of this. But I'm curious, what if I didn't need to do the drugs I do, that I could be fine without them? And what if I wasn't doing the channel? What if I was smoking just as much weed and drinking just as much coffee, but I wasn't being productive? I was still living like a hermit, and I was only doing it to enjoy life and doing nothing productive. If that was the case, would you look at me and my drug use differently as the achiever?
No, I don't think so, because to me, it all depends on what you want. As the achiever, it depends on what you want. What do you want to achieve? That's the important thing, right? So the achiever wants to, as the achiever, I want to achieve, there's like specific things I want to achieve.
And so your achiever doesn't give a shit if I don't want to achieve anything. If my goal is just to be happy, your achiever would see that as a valid goal and wouldn't project.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So what are you noticing? What are you learning about yourself right now, James?
That, I mean, just talking it out, it seems as though it feels like I guess the laid back guy is more reasonable about this.
Okay.
Like having this dialogue, it just in general, or as a whole, I feel like the laid back guy is more.
And here's the crazy part of it that's going to throw another wrench right at you. What part of you feels that way? So in other words, is that your soul? Is that coming from this deep place of equilibrium and clarity? Or is that another emotional perspective coming from another part of who you are? Because what we're trying to find here in this conversation is, what is the deepening, transcendent function, that symbolic place within yourself that's going to come up with an answer to move forward with the system? What's happening right now is there's confusion about what should I do? How should I be? And what part of you just said, oh, that seems reasonable to me, that laid back guy?
That's a good question. Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, what this just made me notice is that the sort of achiever part of me, there's also like there's an aspect of I guess like sacredness or spirituality that I talked about with the pursuits. But what I realized, or what I noticed, is that the part of me that really values these things in that way is not like the center or the soul, or like the center of the self, like the center.
It's not the deepest part of who you are.
Yeah.
It's not your guiding. It's not your guiding force.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's great. So, okay, that's huge awareness. So we know the achiever is not the deepest, most wise part of who you are. It's one voice of many.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, so do you have any further clarity on what the part of you that thinks laid back is more reasonable is? And sometimes when you're searching for a name, it can be hard, but what's the perspective that it's coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What's the sensation?
I think the perspective is something like there's an understanding or a value of the importance of moderation.
Okay. Got it.
And how you don't want to always be pushing yourself in one direction or the other too hard.
Okay, so it's kind of like a conceptual analyzer type of part that's looking at what's happening and giving a commentary. Got it. And do you have any sense, if you deepen into your being right now, what you might offer to these parts of you as a compromise or a solution or a boundary or a set of intentions that you would bring to this situation? So right now you're going up into your head. I can tell by the way your eyes are moving. That's not what I'm asking you to do.
Right. Yep.
If you drop down, and it's okay, we do it all the time. It's natural. It's automatic. If you drop down and trust me, James, even though you're going live right now and you're being very vulnerable and courageous to do this, and I share in my vulnerability because it's vulnerable for the young boy in me to be sharing the work that I do in front of people live instead of just doing it one-on-one. So I'm right here with you, brother. If you trust and deepen into your being for a minute and sink into a sense of connectedness, purpose, trust, surrender into your body, and if you feel the dialogue that you just witnessed, what does your soul have to say in response? You take as much time as you need.
The coffee isn't a bad thing, and the perspective of the achiever or that thought pattern has me sort of wrapped around an axle chasing my tail.
Okay.
When it's okay, you can let go of that wrapping around the axle thought pattern.
Perfect. I want to celebrate this with you. So tell the achiever, say, I am the soul, or whatever you want to call it, the higher self, whatever you want to call it. And achiever, thanks for your feedback. I appreciate what you bring to me. And right now, I'm okay with drinking coffee, so I no longer need to hear it. Something along those lines.
Achiever, I am the soul. And I understand why you are so cautious about becoming dependent on substances like coffee or anything else. And I want you to continue to watch out for dependence, but this is okay.
Awesome. And just finish up the situation by responding as the achiever and making sure everything's copacetic. Achiever, what's your response to that?
I, the achiever, am happy to take on the responsibility of continuing to watch out for going astray and becoming dependent on things like coffee or anything else.
That's amazing, James. Do you realize what you just did? You came up with an answer for your own question. That's amazing.
Yeah.
See, people get so fucked up. They think, oh, let me ask Ryan and Mercury if I should stop drinking coffee. As if we actually have a fucking clue what you should do. You knew what to do. You just had to do the work. Mm-hmm. And you decided, I'm okay. And I'll keep watching out. What a beautiful solution.
I have a question, James. When you were speaking from like the deeper part of yourself, do you have a feeling what that is? Does that feel to you like it was your highest self or your soul, or does that feel like it was some sort of more enlightened subpersonality that's at a closer perspective to the soul?
That's a good question. I don't know, because so I think sometimes when I can really clear my head and sink into my experience, I have I can tell when I'm doing that, because there's a sinking, dropping feeling into my chest. Sometimes it's not easy to get there, but I can notice physiologically when I do get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Me
it's
too.
at least like close to the soul.
I think it was your soul, brother. I've been doing this work with people for a while, and I can tell when they're in that soulful state. And soul doesn't mean, just for everyone listening, it's not a religious proclamation. It simply means whether you have spiritual beliefs or not, the gestalt of who you are, the deeper self. It's connected to what Jung would call the self, and it's that access point within you that is non-judgmental, loving, yet can be firm and hold boundaries. It's in the flow. It's that wu-wei, effortless action state. You know when you're in it because it's so palpable. So yeah, I felt it when you said it.
And when you sunk into that, I sensed something in you that I haven't sensed before in any of our conversations. If you ever, either at this conversation at some point, or if you wanted to try it privately sometime or another time, I wouldn't mind speaking into you to see who I can, I sensed something in there that I would be curious to meet, is essentially my point. And if you ever felt like sort of connecting to that soul point and letting me poke around a bit and say, hello, who is this I'm sensing? I would enjoy that. I sense it's something very high up in the upper soul level, although I'm not sure if it's a sub-personality, if I'm picking up on some sort of guide, or angel, or if it's just that I'm picking up your soul in a way. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's something very up there that I haven't sensed in you before.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would probably be more comfortable, or it would be easier in a private conversation. But yeah, I think that'd be an interesting thing to do for sure.
Yeah, you don't want him to stare into your soul publicly. Just
Yeah.
get really deep in there. All right, thank you, Mercury. I have to thank you. I know that I can be very stubborn and tenacious when I want to do something with someone, and I know that as partners, being on a Zoom call when we don't necessarily have the same agenda, I'm sure that dealing with me sometimes can involve patience, to say the least. So thank you for your patience, because I felt that was really important to do with James.
No, I loved all of that. And even when we sort of conflicted for a minute, I was trying to flow with your thing, and I think I was coming across wrong. Like when it seemed I was trying to convince whatever that personality was, whereas really I was just trying to tease out deeper what it was feeling. But yeah, no, and definitely get firm with me now and then when you need to, because I'll derail shit if you don't keep me on track.
It's hard too, because I have a specific set of training that you come from a different perspective than I have, so it's like I can't expect you to know what the fuck I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? So it's like I have to just communicate and be like, this is what I'm trying to do right now. But I'm aware that has the capacity to take over the conversation. So
also, we do that amazingly well, considering we've never trained together, talked about how to do this, or planned it. Everything everyone sees, this is us doing it. Like, we've never sat down and said, what should we be doing when we do this kind of conversation? I think considering we're doing it all off the cuff, it's going very well.
Absolutely. And thanks, James, for letting us put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no problem.
I bet you weren't expecting it to go that direction.
I mean, I have no expectations.
Okay, good. Awesome. So, what did we learn? Well, I know what I learned. I learned that one of the things I learned, at least, which might segue us into the next piece of our conversation, is that it's so easy to misplace your own sense of personal power. I mean, we do it all the time as humans, and get into this conceptual overview. And even in the chat, you can see it. God bless all your souls. Well, I think it's fine to drink coffee, or, yeah, just let yourself drink. But how, that's not a very psychological way of approaching it, right? Just giving these canned answers, because really, if it doesn't come from this place of clarity from within, it's not very powerful. It's like, oh, I did it because, Jordan Peterson said, if you eat the carnivore diet, then it's fantastic. And, we have to listen to Jordan Peterson instead of testing it against yourself. So I think the work you did was just fantastic, a fantastic display of that principle, as well as, also we can take this a step even further and think, how does this apply to other situations that we're dealing in, other issues that are more complicated, where we do have to take in feedback from others, but still have to maintain that sense of inner dependence.
And on that note, Ryan, for example, when people come to me for private sessions like that you don't see, you're right. People come asking us for advice. How should I look at drinking coffee? How should I deal with, should I forgive this person who abused me? Whatever. And the way I use advice is very different than other people. Many people, what they do is they look for what advice they consider correct, and then they try to convince the person of it. I take the approach of, I throw out one set of advice that I know works for some people. Then I observe their reaction. And so as opposed to the way Ryan asks someone to get parts to talk, the way I get the soul to speak to me is I might, for instance, with somebody say like, well, definitely the view of not drinking coffee is, and I will throw all that out and watch the person's reaction. And then I'll say, how do you feel to that? And if they say, okay, I know all that's true, but it makes me feel this and this and this, that's where I'm hearing the soul. And then I'll go, okay, well, in fact, other people feel, and they might just die. And, I throw that out and I watch the way they react. So that's the way I use advice to tease out information from the soul. And I will give opposite advice and then maybe a third thing in the middle. And I just keep observing the person until they tell me which piece of advice is working with them. And then that's where I start exploring deeper.
Nice.
Also, because James was so nice to be so vulnerable here, I want to offer back, and I'm going to put Ryan on the spot as well. Both me and Ryan will do the same thing for you if you want. Feel free to question Ryan's black hole or inner child, or to make me do something vulnerable right now. We can reverse it if you want.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So here's a question for Ryan. What part of you decided to want to stop drinking coffee?
And rather than in a way of accessing his memories, like, can we speak to the part that made that decision?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it was a mix between the workhorse in me and let's see here, the spiritual seeker, the workhorse, and the warrior challenger aspect of me. From those parts of me, I was feeling really frustrated with my dependence, and I was starting to notice I was I had some physical fatigue and issues that indicated that there might be some sort of adrenal issue going on. And then I checked with my soul, and it just felt like a really good step to take for my health, because I was having some issues. And so, yeah, I think
can we word that more deeply? Can you step into more of that part and say, I is the spiritual seeker?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I can.
As the separate, referring to the. So I'm trying to imitate you. Let's go deeper. That part of you. How do you, not as a memory, how do you feel about this topic?
How do I feel about it right now in the moment? That's a great question. Well, as the addict, I'm fucking pissed because I really would like some more coffee. I mean, what the fuck are these guys doing? I want to drink coffee. I want to feel good. I don't do drugs. I don't drink anymore. So why can't I just have a cup of coffee? I'm very upset that we're not drinking coffee. So I get high when I go running. So that's at least good. But I don't have much left to count on. So I'm now having to find out what else I can enjoy, which is a process of discovery. So, yeah, I think about, I dream about coffee. I'll have dreams about coffee at the night. I mean, as the workhorse, I'm very glad we're not drinking coffee because, I want to be able to continue to master I mean caffeinated coffee. I still drink decaf. I want to continue to be able to master what I'm doing without creating a dependency that's going to bite me in the ass later on. That's like the slippery slope thing because I know my addict as the workhorse. I know this guy. Once he hangs on to something, I mean, he's not like James where he just has a cup. He had 3 or 4 cups, 5 cups, whatever it is, double shots of espresso in the cups. I'm not even talking about the espresso. So I know where it goes. So I'm glad that we're just right now drinking decaf. As a spiritual seeker, I've enjoyed the process of discovery that's allowed me to notice what it's like when I crave something and to not have it. I've just enjoyed that process of learning about myself. And, as a soul, I don't know if I'll be drinking, if I'm going to give them a thumbs up to drink coffee again in the future. All I know is right now, I'm okay with where we're at. And I don't have any negative judgments if we start drinking coffee again.
And for everyone watching, go back and observe that again. Ryan really did exactly what I asked. He sunk in and noticed his mannerisms, his voice changed with each sub-personality. You're exactly. Go back and watch for that. You can see everything shift. And Ryan, I'd like to talk to the addict for a moment that was speaking out about what the fuck's with all this no coffee shit.
Yeah. It's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, so to the addict, I can sympathize with you there. Because I'm not restricted by what you are. And I think people may come across this who aren't at the point you've gotten to. And you said for a moment that you found a few little ways you can get your fix. The running high is one that the other fucking assholes will let you get away with. They don't take away running like coffee. Are there other things that will allow you to get your fix that are safer? So that other people who are trying to quit all the coffee but don't like running, are there other highs, addict, that you find you can slip past the workhorses and such more
Absolutely.
easily?
Yeah, I can do like Wim Hof breathing. It gets a lot of energy moving through my body, and then you hold your breath for a long time, and it's healthy, but at the same time you get this incredible buzz. Really, like I find as the addict that sometimes when I meditate, strangely enough, I do feel I can access that place of feeling a little buzzed when I quiet my mind and go to that place of silence. So that's another way, which is it takes a lot of work to get there. So it's been it's not always the consistent instant gratification that I'm looking for. But yeah, I'll play video games. I'll play video games in the evening sometimes to wind down, and I'll do these. There's a lot of little micro routines that I do that keep me satiated, that keep me feeling like I have that stimulus that I need. One of the things that I learned too through going through 12-step recovery all those years, coming up on my 10th year of sobriety now, is that there's a way in which you can, I've been able to replace that dependency on substance and externals for stimulus and find this like higher power that feels like it gives me energy sometimes. And that feels really good. That feels, as the addict, that feels like something that can nourish and make me feel happy.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Yeah. Thank you for that. And again, when I asked that, you just fell right in back to the exact same body language as when the addict first came out. So I think people rewatching this will really be able to see that in you. That's fantastic. And great answer.
Yeah.
Because for everyone out there with addiction problems, you would be amazed what some meditative exercise or various things you can do to get highs that won't be self-destructive, that your family and friends won't disapprove of, that won't make you lose your job, and that don't make you spend all your fucking money.
Oh, and the other thing I do, as the addict, I listen to audiobooks. Not like academic shit, because I'm reading so much for school all the time. The last thing I need is another academic books, but like fantasy. You know what I mean? So like Brandon Sanderson, Wheel of Time, like crazy epic stories with battles and dragons, and like my young boy loves that, and as the addict I love that. So it's kind of like this playful adventure that I will just like listen to them as much as I can, and I really enjoy it, and podcasts too. So you got your answers from the addict, Mercury.
Thank you.
And that's actually a really good point, that doing, like, as a facilitator and a guide, like, I push people to go that level. So I love how you turned it back on me so that people could see somebody who's been working on this for a while, what it looks like when someone really steps into a part of themselves. Because when people are new to it, they don't get it as quickly usually, like it's not as animated. But once you really get to know these parts of yourself, you can drop into them quite seamlessly. So thank you for holding my feet to the fire. And
that was great, but sorry, James, we could have been doing that without you here. Let's swing back around to you.
No, that's all right. That was awesome. I appreciate that.
Do you have a new topic, or do you want to talk to any of Ryan's sub-personalities? Or
yeah,
mine?
I was going to actually ask about specifically the spiritual seeker's perspective, because I feel like that is in some ways related to my, like, the achiever and me seeing I
was also tempted after that to question his spiritual seeker more, but yeah, since you're here, I'm going to sit back and you talk to the speaker the way I spoke to the addict.
Okay. Ryan's spiritual seeker.
Well, I want to know what part of you's asking the question, and then I'll tell you, and then I'll give you my answer from the spiritual seeker.
No, I think it's the achiever part of me. Because
okay, perfect.
Specifically because of that.
Perfect.
There seems to be a relationship there. Yeah.
Great. So what's the question?
So the question is, how do you view, or what is your feeling towards coffee, and why did you feel like it was a good idea to stop drinking caffeinated coffee?
Really simple. As a spiritual seeker, it was less focus on temporary fixes that are going to make me feel better in the moment, and more focus on the development of my soul and the development of my ability to create energy and to tap into something bigger than myself. And yeah, so it's like that Rumi poem, fasting makes you into a lute. Fasting as in constricting, and any form of fasting, it unclutters the channeling from you to whatever energy is out there, and just opens up possibilities. That's why like vision quests are very powerful, or meditation retreats, because you eliminate distractions, you eliminate external fixations, and then all that's left is like you and the void or the universe, and there's this dialogue that happens, and it's amazing what's just generated out of emptiness that is actually quite full and quite brilliant and beautiful and pleasurable.
For me, a thought arose there, that on this whole issue of drugs, either to accomplish something or to achieve a better state, like what you might consider recreationally. One of the mystics in me felt like it was just as Ryan spoke, I got this weird vision that's hard to explain, but what it communicated was, imagine either your task, even if the task is I just want to feel better, imagine that as a large weight that needs to be moved. Drugs are a lever. It allows you to easily move something, and there are times to just get the work done easily, but if you always use a lever for everything, you will never grow stronger. So there's also a time to struggle against a weight that you maybe can't even move without the drugs to strengthen yourself. And it's to find the balance of do it without a lever often enough to strengthen yourself, but also use a lever as much as is responsible to also be as productive or as pleasantly feeling as possible. That just
and as the seeker too, I've considered that one of the only things that would make sense for me to break my sobriety for, which I wouldn't really consider breaking, is like a shamanic psychedelic ceremony. I think that would be one of the circumstances where I would consider taking a heavier substance for sure, and being okay with it. You know, if my soul was okay with it, I would be okay with it.
Yeah. So what I sort of feel from that is that to me, it is almost like because you're still respecting the sacredness, or there's still a reverence for what you're trying to do, then the achiever part of me doesn't see that as a negative thing.
Right.
If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even when my seeker was just talking about the more aesthetic, restrictions that you might put on yourself as a seeker, I also, like, the other parts of me were chirping in the background. Like, the young boy was like, I don't want to do that. The lazy bear is like, fuck that. I don't, I'm here to live as a human being, not as some, thing out on a mountaintop all alone, or something someone in a cave, or cut off from this world. So, like, as a soul, when I go to my soul, like, I hear all of that, and I don't say, to the seeker, we're going to do everything you say, because everything you say is the end all be all. I listen to the boy and the lazy bear and the addict and the philosopher and what they all want, and I either make a decision of this is what we're gonna do. I'm making an executive choice and deal with it, or I make a compromise where I say, we're gonna do something that kind of is an amalgamation of all these different desires so that we can get different needs met. I think a lot of people live into one personality to the exclusion of others, and they suppress it, and they create this, what Jung would call it a shadow dynamic, because they never fully integrated those other desires into their personality, so it gets shoved away, and then it breaks off and lives a life of its own. So people behave in ridiculous ways, and then they say, I don't know what got into me, or I don't know why I said that. It's because they rejected it, and they didn't consciously think, like, oh, the young boy deserves, or the challenger deserves a piece of my life, or whatever. They just assumed that you can actually, like, cut it off and it's not going to be there anymore, which isn't how it works. You can't just destroy a part of who you are. It's not possible. It'll still be there.
Yeah, it reminds me of when and like I've heard people talk about it in the context of, like, relapsing for an addiction or something. It's almost like when there's like a switch that happens in their head when they sort of make the decision to go, and I guess to go follow through with the relapse or whatever. They, when they come out of it, or after they're done, they're like, I have no idea who that person was,
right?
Sort of thing. So that's what that reminds me of.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. We have an audience question. I'd love to hear what you think, James. Martin says, I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on willpower and discipline versus letting go and seeing what arises, or in combination of the two, or other ways to get going in life. What do you think about that?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I see. So I don't know. It's hard for me to understand how to think about willpower, but what I've sort of observed in myself is that depending on my mood or what personality seems, or sub-personality seems active at the time, I feel like I have more or less willpower. Like, if I'm tired or something, I certainly have a lot less willpower to get things going. And it seems like there's probably ways to discipline yourself to develop maybe like a schedule or something, so that you can, under certain circumstances, reliably drop into a sub-personality that feels like it has more willpower to, get certain tasks done or whatever. But yeah, I definitely see, like, a variability in how much willpower I feel I have to get things done.
For sure.
Yeah.
Did you hear that question, Merc?
I only caught part of it. I could half hear it.
It's the audience question from Martin. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on willpower and discipline versus letting go and seeing what arises. In combination, or the combination of the two, or other ways to get going in life.
So I'm going to jump all the things that built to it. This came up last night in the party, and we rambled about it at points, and then right at the end, when we were down to just the final 5 people in the party, I think, things looped around and brought it together to like a complete point that I could have aimed for, but hadn't been because of the way I fucking do everything chaotically. But I'm going to jump to the high magic perspective, that the proper purpose of magic with a K, or the highest purpose of it, is to connect to your true self, like the self with the capital S. And that the self with the capital S is what contains your true will with a capital W. When you access your true will, you will find that that is identical to the will of the universe itself or the will of God. And if you can achieve that state that a high magician aims for, to become the hermaphrodite, if you can turn lead to gold, if you can find the philosopher's stone, you will find that the difference between going with the flow and using your will disappears. And at that point also you find that the concept of free will and determination disappear. Suddenly everything you can do is absolutely your free will, and is, because that's the same will as the will of the universe or the will of God, your free will is exactly what is predetermined and set in motion by God. It becomes identical. So there's a way to find a place where going with the flow and using your will are the same thing, and that's to find your true will, not these surface illusions that we get caught up with that are presented to us by different subpersonalities.
Which is kind of what James did today, no?
Yes, yeah, very much.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot. I think that was just the tip of the iceberg with him. I'm going to find out more whenever we have a private conversation.
And it's amazing, too. With little to no introduction, I just said, James, go into your soul. And I just gave him a few words of encouragement, and he did it. A lot of people struggle with that, especially over a Zoom webinar where you don't have that contact and the support with the person who's guiding you through it. So, yeah, that was really something special. I think it's very similar to what you just said, Merc. Yeah, that's the deeper will, the will that comes from the soul or the higher self. Wow. Martin says, that's interesting, James, responding to your comments. Yeah, it just reminds me, your question, Martin, reminds me of flow states where you get into that state of effortless action. A lot of marathon runners will report after a while they're just running and they don't even really feel like they're efforting. Running is just happening. Or if you ever find yourself at work and you're really in the zone and work is just happening, it doesn't feel like it's this big uphill battle. Like, those are the states that I think emerge when willpower and surrender converge. And so I think when you build up intention and empowerment and focus, and then you surrender and allow it to flow, I think that's kind of the epitome and the climax of human flow, human capacity, human potential. And those are the states I think that are ideal to try to empower throughout our work days or our play or whatever we're doing, is to try to get into that seamless place. And a lot of times too, when I'm in my meditation ritual, like, watch my hand right now. I'll do this and I'll rock back and forth, and I'll imagine an image, and I'll have like a tone going like da-dum, da-dum, da. It's this ritualistic mindset, and it actually activates your nervous system in a specific way. And this was studied in a book called, why God won't go away, the neuroscience of belief or something like that. But anyways, there's these ritualistic states of being, and I'll get it. And sometimes I'll do it when I'm walking, and then I'll surrender and allow images and sensations to come to me. And so there's this dialectical process happening between will and surrender. And it really gets me into these higher states of consciousness. And I always put in this caveat because you just view that phenomenologically. It doesn't have to be metaphysical. It can be metaphysical. It doesn't have to be. So just it activates something in my brain, in my body, in my energy field that creates a state of flow and connection and meaningful engagement. And it's quite profound. And so I really encourage people to get a ritualistic meditation, whether it's prayer beads or mantra or vipassana or what's the Christian centering prayer is a mystic, like find a mystical tradition. In Sufism they have zikr, where you go around like this and you do a specific technique of chanting, I believe. So I think those are very powerful for the body and the brain and the soul.
Yeah, I think Christians speaking in tongues is the similar, like letting themselves just babble. And often when Christians are speaking in tongues, you'll see them rock a little bit, or the people around them connecting to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like a muscle, that's when I say go to soul, those are the types of states that I'm attempting to help people get into. And once you get it down, you can go to it. Like you could tell me right now, go to your soul, or I could be really angry, having a very high effective response to my environment or to somebody that I'm upset with. And if I have that cue to go to my soul, I can actually break through that emotional wall, really, which is very difficult, and get to that place of connection and reorient myself to the situation. What am I going to do here? How do I need to respond? Oh, okay, that was my challenger getting pissed off. How am I going to reel this back or be creative in dealing with this situation? And or depression is another great example. To break through that emotional wall of feeling stuck and heavy and be able to get to that next level of connection where you can find a source to get beyond it. It's really important, I think, that people develop these sensibilities. And it's a shame because it's strawmanned as unscientific or unfalsifiable or woo-woo, right? It's like, and people have no respect. Oh, not all people. A lot of people have no respect for these deep places of connection within themselves. And I think a lot of that is because of the post-enlightenment world we live in, where we have basically worshipped the gods of science and forgotten about the phenomenological states of being that were catered to by religious or tribal societies or romantic worldviews. And so we kind of did throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we no longer honor those as viable experiences as an overall society. And I think that we're changing that. I think that we are doing the work, James, Mercury, myself, the people who are in the audience, a lot of us. There's various communities popping up all over the globe who are working to change this. John Vervaeke, I think, is doing a fantastic job explaining this from a COGSI perspective. I think Peterson left us some inklings and some intimations of what these deeper states of connection are. So yeah, I think there's a lot more work to be done, but we're getting closer. Thank you for letting me ramble there.
And I want to throw in here that we've been very focused on the more together side of life, because James is really together and Ryan's together. But everything Ryan was just saying about how with practice he can drop into the soul at a moment's notice and how that helps him deal with life. Also for all the other fucking nut jobs in our community. I feel like sort of that's the side of the conversation that hasn't come up just because it's you two here. But I just want to point out to anyone else, like whether you're fucking schizophrenic or whatever other extreme condition you have, it's amazing. And it's not going to be quick, but put a decade into it and you'll be able to drop into that soul space as psychosis is emerging at absolutely suicidally depressive moments. And I don't even know where to start to say how much of a world of difference that is when you learn how to drop into soul. Yeah, but I just want to throw it out there that it's one of the goals you can set for anyone who's got major mental illnesses. Ryan's subpersonality work, and if you can learn to drop into soul, you'd be amazed where that will take you eventually. But it's a long journey.
Yeah, but it to me it seems like there's along the way there's little increments of improvement or progress that you can feel, and those can be really encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though it's a long progress, you know, it's not like it helps you keep from seeing it as like this daunting thing that, you know, is so far off that it'll be extremely difficult.
Actually, excellent point. Yeah. I was framing just how long it is till the point I'm at, but it's exactly what, you know, at one point the great relief was, okay, I made it through this cycle without getting locked up in an insane asylum. Like, thank fuck for that. And for you know, the first few years, that was the progress I made. Where I wasn't together enough that I was functioning well. I was barely holding it together, or I wasn't holding it together, but I was falling apart in such a way that I didn't need to be dragged off by the cops and put on fucking Zyprexa. So, you know, that was the first stage. And then, yeah, it gradually improves. And then at a certain point, it was like, okay, well, holy shit, I can start seeing people now and then. And then, you know, next thing, oh, wow, I'm ready for this now. Now I'm ready for that. And for me, it's led all the way to here, which me a decade ago would, well, if I was manic, I would have believed I was doing what I am now. But like, unless I was way up in that mania where you feel anything's possible, this would have seemed impossible to me. And, but yeah, it's worth it every step of the way. So even if, yeah, that you only have 3 years of life left, it's still worth setting this journey and making the progress you can, even if you can't get to that point a decade later.
Yeah, and growth is exponential. So it's not linear. It happens like in giant leaps, and then we plateau, and then we make another leap. That's how learning and transformation happens. So when you stick with something, what happens is you'll hit a wall. There's a barrier. It's a threshold against the rites of passage that brings you into the next phase. So if you are able to stick with it, eventually that wall will break down and you'll have a breakthrough. And then you'll have a leap, a giant leap where you exponentially grow within a very rapid amount of time. And then things will plateau a little bit and there'll be homeostasis, right? Because we can't constantly be transforming. Otherwise, we would never be in homeostasis. It would be too disruptive to our hierarchy of needs. What we need is the ability to transform and then regulate, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be a survivable situation from a neurological perspective. So when we reach that homeostasis, things tend to concretize and become stagnant. It's like Peterson's order versus chaos, right? So things can't tend to become stagnant after a while. There's usually a period of paradise, and then it degenerates into tyranny, and then you need to transcend to the next level and keep pushing forward. So that's to be expected when working on any goal or any process of development, to go through those phases of exponential growth, and then homeostasis, and then stagnancy, and then being fed up, and then being, oh, I'm fed up, that means I need to change or I need to do something. You're taking cues from your body. Emotions, people get caught up in thinking emotions are like waste, like they're like toxic buildup from things that have happened in our life. That's not the case. A lot of times emotions are cues. They are messages. They're signaling some sort of information that we might be able to take action on, right? So, oh, depression is here. What does that tell me about how I might move forward? Rather than depression is here, why am I so depressed? Why do I always feel this way? But actually looking for a way that this emotion is a signal or a message that you might decode and add value to your life through that.
Yeah, so that reminds me a lot of how Vervaeke talks about things in his Meaning Crisis series, because you have a certain framework with which you look at the world, and you can call it your value hierarchy or whatever. And then you hit a place where you have a problem, and after you gain some insight, your worldview shifts somehow. You maybe incorporate more and more things into it. And then as you sort of move around in the world with that new worldview, you bump into new problems, and eventually you hit enough problems where you need to have another insight to expand your worldview again. So that picture of just the plateauing and then
Yes.
get that makes a lot of sense to me. I like
Yes.
that
Yeah,
visualization.
and what's true today does not necessarily hold up for us tomorrow. Like, so that doesn't mean that truth is relative and it's postmodern. I'm saying that whatever is deeply felt as true today. I like for you, James. Today, what's most true for me is that I'm okay with coffee. That's what you came to, and that was a beautiful realization. And then being open-minded, because what happens is that because of the way we go back to homeostasis, that will tend to concretize into the new law or the new regulation. Pay attention to our signals and the way that our life changes so that we're open to, oh, what was true for me yesterday is no longer true for me today. And that's okay. A lot of people think, oh, that means I'm irrational or I'm a contradiction and I can't figure out which is right. No, it's actually like maybe you have a source of deep wisdom in you that understands context, that time and place and situation and the parts of who I am in that moment are different and they fluctuate. And so instead of taking what's true today and applying it, oh, this is true forever, just be open-minded, continuing to do the soul searching for what might shift and transform over the next several days, several weeks, several months, several years. And then you might find, oh no, this is still true. It still remains. But you'll never know if you don't check in.
Also, James, with what he was saying, one thought occurred to me specifically with the coffee. So if sort of what you've come to today is, hey, I'm okay with myself drinking coffee, expect that the question might come up to you again later. You're going to doubt yourself in a different mood. But one thing I find that can help you relax into your decision and deal with the doubts later is consciously think to yourself, what would be the signs that I'm making a mistake? So for instance, maybe for you, a sign that it's a mistake is that in 2 weeks you're drinking 2 cups a day and in 3 weeks you're drinking 3. So just clearly define what would be a sign that I was wrong about that and something that you can observe like scientifically so that when you have your doubt, you know what to go back to. It's not a vague feeling, am I making a mistake? You can go, am I making a mistake? Well, wait, is my coffee drinking going up or whatever else it is you think of, if it disrupts your sleep cycle, for instance, might be another thing, but just be very aware of what the signs would be so that when a doubt arises, you know what to check and it's not that vague dragon that, is something wrong about this? And if you find it's going the way you thought it would, then you proceed. Or if you're like, well, shit, no, I'm drinking 3 cups a day now and I'm not sleeping properly, then you know it's time to go back and re-examine it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's certainly helpful. Yeah. It just, I guess it just seems like it requires you to be aware of what's happening as things change.
Live in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's no replacement for that, right? Like there's no concept or rule book that is going to replace being in the moment and attuning to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Also, yeah, you can develop the scientific way of looking at it as well as also define what would be the outcome you hope for that would show you it's right. And that might be your productivity, the fact that you still sleep well, and be scientific about it. Consider it a thesis that, yes, coffee is good for me. Then enact the experiment and then honestly observe the results. Don't lie to yourself that you're doing better than you are or vice versa. And then again, you can re-aim from that point once you have the results of your experiment.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember seeing there was a question. So let me see if I can find it. Oh, and Sally says, you're all beautiful, and it makes me happy you exist and are motivated to do this. Thank you so much. And I feel the same way about the community, especially lately with all the parties we've been having where we get into these in-depth discussions with a dozen people. Everyone showing up here is absolutely beautiful. I'm really happy you all exist. And I love the way so many people here are motivated to just do better. But Magnavox Slaps asks, should I pursue a career that has job security that I'm semi-passionate about, or pursue one with bad job security that is more enticing? So what do you two think of that?
I feel like that's really tough to answer because there's a lot of context that is left out that's really important. You know?
Yeah, it's one of those
things like, how old are you? What are your responsibilities? Like, do you have a kid or something like that?
Right.
So, it seems like that. Just my impression is that doing this sort of work that Ryan's been talking about, by going into yourself is how you're going to figure that out, probably.
I think exactly what
he
you
nailed
just
it.
And what you pointed out is what the person can do. Examine your situation. So, for instance, if you have 7 kids and, you're taking care of sick parents, and probably you've got your answer. On the other hand, if you realize that you're very well set up to take risks and you're in a situation where you've got 3 years of your life wide open, maybe you have financial insecurity doesn't seem very jeopardous to you. You're happy to live off next to nothing. So I would examine your circumstances, see what that informs you, and then perhaps do some subpersonality work. Which subpersonalities want a secure job? Talk to them, ask them why. Which subpersonalities are enticed by the riskier job? Talk to them, ask why. And if that's not good enough, doing it on your own, write into the channel or show up at a party, and or James or Ryan will talk you through some of it.
Yeah, I agreed with James about the context and it's such a personal choice that you'd have to look at the different parts of who you are, like Mercury said, like James mentioned, and really make a decision based on what feels most meaningful to you. It's really difficult. We can give general advice. Generally speaking, do I believe that following purpose is a better sacrifice than looking for security? Absolutely. That's what I believe about life. That's what I would advise my younger self to do if I could go back 5-10 years. I would say do what you love and let the chips fall where they may. Again, that's so hard to apply to such a wide audience with so many different contextual discrepancies. So it's quite impossible to give universal advice in general. It's one of those things that in the self-help industry is very popular to tell people what to do with certain questions, and it resonates with a lot of people. But the only reason it resonates with certain people is because those were the answers they were looking for. Those were the answers that they were looking for to their particular questions, or they heard it and it resonated deep within them somehow. But there is no universal. I'm going to be very redundant, but I think it's worth it because we're so conditioned to believe that there's a universal answer. There is no universal answer to that question. And it's so context specific, it's not even funny. And I think that we are woefully programmed in our culture as Americans and Westerners to believe that somebody else has answers for our questions. And to the point where it's damaging and I even feel even just saying it is difficult because I know how much our programming has us set up to believe that that's not the case, and that's what we're up against. We're up against years and years of cultural reinforcement that somebody else out there knows something about my life that I don't, and that's really not to say that there's no such thing as expertise or like, for example, if somebody has a lot of experience with making those choices, they're in a position of expertise, whether it be a trained psychologist or someone who's been in the same position that you have, Magnavox. They're in a position of expertise where they can offer you wisdom. This is what I learned. This very well might apply to you. That doesn't mean that it will, but the likelihood, the probability increases pretty significantly. Somebody who studies psychology is in a really good position, or who's an expert in psychology, to say, hey, well, here's what I've learned. Here's generally the things, the principles about life that you might be able to apply. But don't stop there. Don't just get that answer and assume that's the be-all, end-all. You have to soul search, and there's no getting around that, unfortunately. Or fortunately, because it's such a beautiful thing. Does that make sense, Merc and James?
Yeah, absolutely.
It made perfect sense to me, but I know you very well, so I don't know if you missed something there that other people were confused. Because I know you're thinking very well. So even when you just say a little bit, it makes sense to me.
No, made complete sense to me too.
Cool. Well, I'm ready to wind down unless you have some other topics, guys.
Nope.
No? Okay.
Done.
So I'll wrap up on saying that we are having another party again tonight. And for anyone watching, like I forget who it was who'd asked that question. When we do parties, most of the time we watch something first. Not always, but even when we watch something first, the end of the night just goes into anyone talking about whatever they want. The conversations have gotten surprisingly deep. Sometimes we dive really far into something philosophically, or other times it's a nice intimate group. It's a wonderful environment, and sometimes we really dive into what someone's going through. So anyone who wants a chance to be more interactive and talk through these ideas. Like for instance, James was there last night for quite a while and we got in depth on some fascinating things. So watch for, I always announce them by posting a Lunatic Live. At the moment, we're going through Doom Patrol. So it's like an episode and then a long discussion. Last night was 6 hours total. And yeah, just it's going really well. So watch for a Lunatic Live that has a party announcement, if anyone, and it's whether you want to discuss something theoretically, but also like with this crowd, if someone wants to do some parts work, or actually, yeah, even my, it's gotten sort of mystical and my angel has spoken up a few times at some places. So if someone wants to come in and do some parts work with themselves, or yeah, some spiritual seeking with the group, it's really working out very well. And we're doing one tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll post an announcement in a little while.
Awesome. James, it's always a pleasure, man. You're awesome and very fun to talk to, and always earnest and seeking and authentic. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah,
and
talk to you guys.
Just let me know if you want to have a private talk sometimes. I'm very curious to see what great force it is that I sensed in you today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And so maybe on that, Ryan, finish by, can we post a Discord link? Because that's also where if anyone wants a private session with me, or to reach out about doing a podcast, either for our channel or if you have your own, you can write into Sorting Myself Out 0, or if you want to write to me directly, if you join our Discord, I'm Mercury on there. Someone else is the Red Mercury Files. I'm just Mercury, and you can send me direct messages there.
Okay, I'm looking for a link to share in the description for the Discord, so I'll go ahead and do that real quick. Invite people. This link expires in 1 day, so I'm going to see if I can edit it so that it doesn't expire. Never.
Although the last time you made a link that wasn't supposed to expire, I gave it to someone and it didn't work.
Okay, well, hopefully that doesn't happen again this time. Also, Andrew said to Magnavox, try to find, those are seeming opposites. Try to find a job where you can be secure and also do what you love. I think something along those lines. So, yeah, compromises, those are good. So it's never usually as black and white as it feels like in our minds. Cool. Do you mind if I end the stream, or the Discord link's in the description? Anything else?
No, it looks like someone just asked what time the party tonight is. It's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I don't know where you are, but you can look online to find the time difference.
Awesome. Thanks again,
me,
James.
That's 2.5 hours from now is when the party starts. But they go between 4 and 7 hours, and feel free to join late.
All right, guys.